In the world of true crime, you learn quickly. Not every person who comes to help is here for the same reason. Lily and Jack Sullivan, two young lives that slipped out of sight in a place where nothing like this was supposed to happen. No city noise, no anonymous crowds. Just a small Nova Scotia community where everyone claims to know everyone, and yet no one can say where these children are. Then, months into the silence, a new figure arrives. Not a police officer, not a private investigator, an influencer. Someone with a camera, an audience, and a reputation for chasing headlines. They come to search for the children, but their presence stirs the town like a stone dropped into still water. Whispers turn into speculation. Neighbors watch from behind curtains. And at the center of it all, a voice rises above the rest. The children's own grandfather. Not with gratitude, but with accusation. Why? Why would a grandfather, still without his grandchildren, publicly challenge someone claiming to help? Did he see a distraction from the truth? Did he recognize something the rest of us missed? Or is this case now tangled in a new layer of suspicion that could derail what little hope remains? Because in this story, every move matters, every word is weighted, and when two children are still missing, nothing and no one should take our eyes off the truth. This isn't about clicks. This isn't about content. This is about Lily and Jack Sullivan and finding out who, exactly, is standing in the way of justice. But before we dive into this, kindly subscribe to our channel if you believe in fighting for justice. We've just crossed 4,000 subscribers, all because of your support, and we need that same energy to reach 5,000, then 6,000, and then 10,000. So go ahead and drop your fingerprints on that subscribe button and where you watching from, because wherever you are the day this vision is fulfilled, I will send my appreciation straight to you. Let's keep building this community that fights for justice together. When two children disappear, every moment matters. Every action, every word can change the course of the search. But in this case, the spotlight didn't just come from police officers, trained search teams, or community volunteers. It came from someone with a camera, a following, and a mission. This is no longer just the story of Lily and Jack Sullivan's disappearance. It's the story of how attention itself, both helpful and harmful, can bend the direction of an investigation. How a single presence can ignite rumors, shift focus, and even divide a community already walking on the edge of grief and suspicion. To understand why this moment is so pivotal, we have to step back. To the last known day Lily and Jack were seen alive. Please, let's make something clear. Here at Detective Max, we urge you all that this mission is not about fame, attention, or clicks. It is about justice. It is about finding the truth, and it is about ensuring that Lily and Jack's story is heard, not distorted, not hidden, but resolved. It was an ordinary day in the kind of town where ordinary is the norm, the kind of place where a child's absence should be noticed immediately. Yet that day came and went. Somewhere between the morning light and the darkening sky, the laughter of two children was silenced. The details we do know are chilling. A sighting near a wooden bridge, anxious expressions noticed by a neighbor in the days prior, and a community that didn't yet realize the ground beneath them was about to shift forever. Now, with the case still open and answers still buried, a new figure has stepped into the picture. Not as a witness, not as a suspect, but as an influencer who came to search. And the reaction? A very public accusation from the children's own grandfather. A moment that changed how many viewed both the investigation and the people circling it. The question is, was this an effort to help, or a move that pulled us further away from the truth? Before the influencer's arrival in Nova Scotia, the search for Lily and Jack Sullivan wasn't just slowing down, it was quietly bleeding momentum. The urgency of the first 72 hours had long since dissolved into a fog of frustration, unanswered calls, and leads that seemed to vanish as quickly as they appeared. In those early days, the entire region had felt electrified with purpose. Posters taped to every pole, volunteer search parties combing the fields, strangers showing up at doorsteps with food for the family. But as the weeks passed, the warmth of that unity began to fade, replaced by something colder. A quiet, uneasy suspicion. Conflicting witness accounts were at the heart of it. One neighbor was adamant. She'd seen Lily and Jack playing in their yard on the afternoon they vanished. Another insisted they hadn't been outside for days before the disappearance. Others added fragments, sounds they thought they'd heard, cars they thought they'd seen, but no two stories seemed to fit together. And the deeper investigators dug, the murkier it all became. It wasn't just a broken timeline, it was a timeline being actively rewritten in real time. Meanwhile, the rumor mill was working overtime. In small towns, secrets rarely stay buried, unless of course enough people want them to. Some locals spoke in hushed tones about foul play, the idea that something terrible had happened to the children close to home, and that someone, maybe more than one person, was working hard to hide it. Others leaned toward a very different theory, one that framed the children's absence not as a crime, but as an act of protection, a desperate move by Malaya Brooks Murray, to spirit them away from a danger no one else could, or would address. These two narratives didn't just coexist, they clashed, quietly but persistently, at every kitchen table, every grocery line, every whispered conversation in the post office. And hanging over all of it was the widening gap between the community and law enforcement. People remembered the delays, the GPS data from the Wooden Bridge area that wasn't shared promptly, the unexplained lag in reviewing trail camera footage, the guarded and often vague public statements from officials. Each omission, each unanswered question, planted another seed of mistrust. For some, the feeling was simple: the people in charge weren't telling the whole story. For others, it was more complicated. Maybe they couldn't tell it. Either way, faith in the process was eroding fast. It was into this fractured, tense environment that an outsider, an influencer with a camera, a platform, and an agenda would soon step. They weren't just entering a missing persons case. They were stepping into a community already split by suspicion, frustration, and fear. And when they did, the fragile balance holding that silence together would start to crack. They didn't arrive quietly. In fact, they couldn't have, not with a following that spanned continents, and a reputation for swooping into unsolved cases like a storm. To their audience, they were a hero of the digital age, a relentless seeker of truth who had cracked other missing persons' mysteries, or at least claimed to have. To others, they were something different, a spotlight chaser, someone who knew that a tragedy could be a stage if framed just right. Their decision to come to Nova Scotia raised immediate questions. Was it a response to a credible tip that hadn't reached law enforcement? A gut feeling sparked by a detail buried in the early news reports? Or was it simply the recognition that the Sullivan children's disappearance had the makings of a high-engagement story? Two young siblings, gone without trace, a fractured family, and a town heavy with suspicion. Whatever their motivation, the timing couldn't have been more combustible. The investigation was stalling. The public's attention was slipping, and suddenly here came a figure who could turn the case into headlines again. From the moment they stepped off the plane, the case stopped belonging solely to the people of this community. The influencer documented everything: their drive from the airport, their first walk through the quiet streets, even their initial stop at a roadside diner where they claimed a source had met them. Photos went up in real time, live streams pinged followers across the world, and in between these moments were the cryptic teases: "I know more than the public realizes." I've spoken to people who haven't told the police everything. For locals, it was a jolt. Some saw this as the break the case desperately needed: fresh eyes, a loud voice, and a platform that could pressure people into talking. Others saw danger, the risk that half-truths, misunderstood timelines, and selectively edited footage could ignite rumors that had already caused deep divisions. But whether welcomed or resented, one thing was certain: the tone had shifted. The quiet, methodical search had been replaced by something faster, louder, and far more public. And in a case where so much of the truth seemed to be hiding behind closed doors, a global audience was now knocking on them. It began quietly, a comment here, a remark there. But in small towns, quiet doesn't stay quiet for long. And when a man like this speaks, the entire community leans in to listen. Lily and Jack's grandfather is not an outsider to this pain. He is not a man watching from the sidelines. His life, his bloodline, his very identity is tied to these two missing children. Which is why when he decided to go public, The weight of his words landed like stones dropped into still water. The ripples went everywhere. He didn't mince them either. His accusation was clear. The influencer, who had descended on Nova Scotia with a camera in one hand and a large following at their back, was not here for the children. Not in his eyes. He claimed they had stepped over boundaries that no outsider, no matter their intentions, should dare to cross. He accused them of twisting details, shaping a story to fit their online persona, and in doing so, blurring the truth that mattered most, what really happened to Lily and Jack. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. His tone carried an unshakable mixture of fury and fatigue. You could hear the exhaustion of a man who'd sat through too many questions, too many wrong turns, too many whispered theories in supermarket aisles. You could hear the protectiveness of someone who'd already lost enough and wasn't about to see the rest of his family dissected for clicks. But underneath, and this is what some couldn't ignore, there was something else, something less easily defined, a defensiveness. The kind that tightens when people start getting too close to something you'd rather keep in the shadows. Was he defending his family's dignity, or defending secrets that could change the narrative completely? That's the question people began to whisper. And once a question like that starts moving through a community, it's impossible to take it back. The town split almost overnight. To some, the grandfather was a hero in this moment, the last barrier against what they saw as a growing circus, where grief was on display and tragedy had become a backdrop for personal branding. To others, he was standing in the way of progress, blocking the one person who seemed willing to challenge the slow, guarded investigation and bring new attention to a case that had grown cold in too many people's minds. But the most dangerous shift was the one no one wanted to admit out loud. From the moment that accusation was made, the disappearance of Lily and Jack became less about the children and more about the fight between a grieving family and an uninvited outsider. And in that shift, there's a risk. Because when a case becomes about personalities, it can stop being about the truth. From the moment the influencer's first post about Nova Scotia went live, something shifted. It wasn't just that more people were suddenly talking about Lily and Jack. They were talking about the story of Lily and Jack, and that's not the same thing as finding them. On the surface, the visit looked promising. New eyes meant renewed attention. Tips began trickling in from strangers hundreds of miles away, convinced they'd seen something, heard something, remembered something. For a few brief days, the stagnant waters of the investigation rippled with new possibilities. But attention is a double-edged blade. For every genuine lead that surfaced, there were 3 more dead ends. Tips from people chasing clout, theories pulled from half-read headlines, and outright fabrications spun into comment sections like cobwebs. The police, already stretched thin, had to sift through this avalanche of noise, knowing that buried somewhere within it could be the one detail they truly needed. And then there was the human side, the ground-level searchers, the locals who had combed through woods and waterways in silence, who had braved the biting Atlantic wind with nothing but flashlights and determination. For them, the influencer's presence was jarring. Suddenly, searches that had been private, almost sacred acts of service, were interrupted by cameras, commentary, and live broadcasts. Some volunteers welcomed the attention, believing it might finally break the case open. Others walked away entirely, unwilling to have their grief turned into a backdrop for someone else's content. This isn't a new tension. In other missing persons cases, social media has been both a hero and a saboteur. There have been moments where online sleuths uncovered key evidence the authorities had overlooked. But there have also been moments where misinformation spread faster than the truth, destroying reputations and even halting progress when suspects were wrongly accused. And so the question lingered over Nova Scotia like a winter fog. Was the influencer's presence breathing new life into the search for Lily and Jack? Or was it turning the hunt for 2 missing children into something else entirely? A show, a performance, a story that could be told, uploaded and monetized, regardless of whether it ended with the truth. Long before the influencer ever set foot in Nova Scotia, one location had already lodged itself in the minds of those following Lily and Jack's disappearance. A small wooden bridge tucked away along a dirt road not far from the Sullivan home. It wasn't the kind of place you'd stumble upon by accident. Locals knew it, but only as a quiet crossing used mostly by hunters, hikers, or the occasional dog walker. It was out of the way, secluded, and, as some would later argue, the perfect place for something to happen unseen. What drew attention to the bridge in the first place wasn't just its isolation. It was the metallic star sticker found nearby. Witnesses claimed it matched the pattern on Lily's jacket, a small but chilling detail that transformed an ordinary spot into a focal point for both search teams and online speculation. People began to wonder, was this where the trail had gone cold, or where it should have been heating up? During the influencer's visit, whispers spread quickly. Would they go to the bridge? Would they film there? And if so, would it finally force law enforcement to release more about what had actually been found, or confirm whether the sticker was truly connected to Lily? The area, according to some sources, had been combed early in the investigation, but trail camera footage from that sector, and GPS data from devices belonging to certain individuals, had been delayed in review. No one seemed to know why. Official statements danced around it. Some suggested technical issues. Others suspected selective withholding of evidence. When the influencer finally hinted online about revisiting a place that matters more than the public realizes, it didn't take long for followers to connect the dots. If the bridge was indeed the target of their attention, it reignited theories that had been simmering for months. Theories about who might have taken the children there, when and why. But the question remained, was this renewed focus a genuine attempt to break open a stalled lead? Or was the bridge now being used as a prop in the influencer's ongoing narrative? For the families, the volunteers, and those watching from around the world, that distinction mattered. Because in the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan, every location, every scrap of evidence, every theory had weight, and mishandling any one of them could mean losing the truth forever. As the influencer's presence in Nova Scotia intensified, so did the grandfather's vocal opposition. Every public statement, every pointed interview, was laced with caution, frustration, and a palpable sense of protectiveness. "You don't understand the situation," he warned during one live broadcast. "There are lines you cannot cross when children are involved." But what exactly was he shielding? Was this concern purely for privacy, or did it hint at secrets that someone within the family, or even the community, feared being exposed? The influencer's coverage, complete with live streams, cryptic statements, and constant documentation, drew attention not only from the public, but potentially from those directly involved. Some observers suggested that the influencer might have stumbled upon sensitive information, details that the family or local authorities were not ready for, or perhaps wished to remain hidden. Was there knowledge of circumstances that could implicate someone close to the children? Or was the scrutiny simply too overwhelming for a family already reeling from fear, guilt, and suspicion? Patterns like this have emerged repeatedly in missing children cases. When external investigators enter a delicate situation, family members sometimes react with public outrage or defensive posturing. This could be motivated by genuine concern, preventing misinformation, protecting evidence, or safeguarding the children's memory. In other instances, however, it may serve to obscure uncomfortable truths, or slow the emergence of incriminating details. The line between protective behavior and deliberate concealment often becomes indistinguishable. In Pictou County, this tension created a narrative all its own. The community was polarized. Some supported the influencer, believing fresh eyes could break through the stagnation of the investigation. Others sided with the grandfather, convinced that outsiders risked contaminating evidence or creating false leads. Each argument carried weight, because beneath the surface of every opinion lay fear. Fear that the truth was more complicated and more devastating than anyone wanted to admit. The critical question remained, was the grandfather's criticism solely about shielding his family from exploitation, or was it also a barrier, intentionally or not, to prevent certain facts from surfacing? And if so, what truths were being hidden? Every reaction, every silence, every warning became a piece of the puzzle. In a case like Lily and Jack Sullivan's, where absence and silence are as revealing as action, even the smallest gestures hint at a story that someone is desperate to control. In this delicate web, motives overlap: protection, fear, shame, and possibly guilt. The influencer's presence was not just a disruption, it became a test of what the community and the family were willing to reveal, and what they would guard at all costs. Every camera shot, every live stream comment, every public accusation, was a ripple across a pond already turbulent with grief, suspicion, and unanswered questions. With every live stream, every photo, every post made by the influencer, the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan became more than a missing children investigation. It became a public spectacle. The glare of attention, while sometimes helpful, carries a weight few truly understand. For families in crisis, constant exposure can be psychologically devastating. Anxiety escalates, stress becomes almost unbearable, and every decision is scrutinized, misinterpreted, or weaponized by the court of public opinion. The presence of cameras and online commentary can pressure witnesses to speak before they're ready, or worse, create false leads and even false confessions. People who might have seen something or known more may retreat into silence, terrified of judgment or retaliation. In this environment, truth becomes slippery, obscured by noise, and the investigation risks becoming a series of reactions to public attention, rather than careful, measured police work. Ethically, the situation raises serious questions. How far is too far? At what point does the line between raising awareness and exploiting a tragedy become blurred? When an influencer streams a search or posts dramatic theories for their audience, the boundary between informing the public and sensationalizing the grief of a community is dangerously thin. For Pictou County, the consequences were immediate. Volunteers reported tension in the field. Some were distracted by the cameras. Others were intimidated by the influx of strangers documenting their every move. Inside the family, fear mixed with frustration. The grandfather's anger, once seen as protective, began to look like a desperate attempt to regain control over a narrative spiraling beyond anyone's hands. And yet, the spotlight was not without potential benefits. Increased public attention can generate tips, uncover previously overlooked clues, and pressure authorities to act with greater urgency. But every step forward carries a risk. In a case as delicate as this, one wrong word, one misunderstood post, or one viral misstep can undo weeks of painstaking investigation. The challenge then is balance, using attention to illuminate critical paths while ensuring that the lives, emotions, and truth at the center of the case are not distorted or damaged by the very visibility meant to help them. Awareness is powerful, but without care, it can become its own kind of danger. At the core of this case lies a truth that cannot be ignored. Children like Lily and Jack do not simply vanish without someone somewhere knowing exactly what happened. Every footstep, every last glance, every action in their final hours was observed by someone present, someone nearby, or someone who had influence over the unfolding events. That knowledge exists, hidden in silence, and it carries weight far heavier than any rumor or headline. Then came the influencer. Cameras, live streams, posts, cryptic videos. Their presence transformed Pictou County from a quiet town in mourning into a stage watched by thousands. And suddenly every street corner, every trail, every abandoned back road became a scene to be examined, dissected, and broadcast. But this sudden attention raises a crucial question. Did it uncover hidden truths? Or did it scatter focus from the careful, methodical work of investigators who had been on the ground for weeks? Were the renewed tips genuine leads, or distractions generated by the glare of online attention? Amid the glare, the grandfather's reaction stood out sharply. Protective, furious, and deeply emotional, he publicly condemned the influencer, accusing them of overstepping boundaries, of potentially harming the investigation, and of drawing attention away from the children themselves. But beneath the surface, there may be more, a fear that painful truths, ones he could not control, might be exposed. His words, though loud and public, carried layers: anger, grief, and perhaps the desperate hope of keeping certain realities from coming to light. And yet, no matter the social media spectacle, no matter the opinions divided across the town and the internet, one reality remains unchanged. Someone knows more than they've said. That someone may be a witness, a caretaker, a relative, or a neighbor. And as long as they remain silent, Lily and Jack's story is incomplete. The challenge for all who care about these children is to sift through the noise, to separate spectacle from substance, to observe, analyze, and question everything. Because hidden in that silence may be the single clue that finally brings them home. The truth is both simple and devastating. No child disappears without leaving traces, not on cameras, not in footsteps, not in the hearts of those who knew them. And while the world debates, argues or speculates, someone out there carries the knowledge that could end the uncertainty. The question now is, who will speak, and how long can the silence hold? Even after the influencer's visit, the case remains shrouded in uncertainty. What, if anything, did they actually uncover? Their cameras captured every step, every whispered observation, every cryptic comment, but was it insight into the children's whereabouts, or merely a performance designed to draw attention and engagement online? The critical question remains, did this visit reveal evidence that authorities hadn't yet received? Were there observations, encounters, or details that could shift the investigation, but have yet to be shared with those tasked with finding Lily and Jack? Or was the trip ultimately more about content than closure, a spectacle that transformed a private, painful search into a viral narrative? Then there's the grandfather's reaction. His public statements were sharp, urgent, and filled with emotion. But why choose this forum? Why not communicate privately with investigators, or even the influencer themselves? His words broadcasted across news outlets and social media reveal a mix of grief, anger, and perhaps a desire to control the story. Was he protecting the family from exploitation, or shielding certain truths from surfacing? And as these questions mount, the town itself begins to fracture. Opinions diverge. Some defend the influencer, believing their presence could breathe life into stalled leads. Others side with the grandfather, warning that external attention can harm, mislead, or even endanger those involved. In a community already shaken by the disappearance of two small children, every action, every word, every decision now carries the weight of suspicion. And in this murky middle ground, the truth feels more elusive than ever. Ultimately, the open questions are as haunting as the disappearance itself. Who knows more than they've said? Who holds the pieces of the puzzle, and why have they stayed silent? And as the community watches, debates and waits, one undeniable reality remains. Lily and Jack didn't vanish into thin air. Someone, somewhere, has the answers. As the dust settles from the influencer's visit, and the town wrestles with rumors, one truth remains. This case is not just about two missing children. It's about the control of information, the battle over narrative, and the pursuit of justice in the shadows of public spectacle. In this case, the search for Lily and Jack has become more than a manhunt for clues. It's a battle for the story itself. And stories can be twisted, buried, or weaponized. Every word, every gesture, every post can shape perception, mislead, or protect the guilty. This is where you come in. The eyes of the public matter. If you've noticed something unusual, a small detail others may have overlooked, or any information that could help bring clarity to this case, share it. Drop your reasoned thoughts in the comments. No slander, no accusations, only facts or ideas that could move the investigation forward. Every observation counts. Every lead matters. And remember the chilling reality: Lily and Jack didn't just vanish. And if you think you know something, remember the clock is ticking. Detective Max signs off with a final reminder. This mission is not about fame, attention, or clicks. It is about justice. It is about finding the truth. And it is about ensuring that Lily and Jack's story is heard, not distorted, not hidden, but resolved.